Taking the first step out the door to the gym, that's the hardest part, right? You got to do it, and then you got to do it some more. That leads to real change. We'll talk CrossFit and more with Joe DeGain next on the Compounding Change podcast.
This is the Compounding Change podcast, sharing stories of small but meaningful changes that compound into amazing impact. Brought to you by Shannon Davis and daviscompoundingchange.com. Change happens fast. Take advantage. Discussions on this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Retirement Plan Advisors LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. Cambridge Investment Research and Retirement Planning Advisors are not related to daviscompoundingchange.com or this podcast. Now, here's your host, Shannon Davis.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Compounding Change, the podcast about navigating life's transitions, building resilience, and investing in what really matters. I'm your host, Shannon Davis, and today's guest is someone who spent years coaching both inside the gym and beyond it. Joe DeGain is a longtime Flowmaster for CrossFit seminar staff with CrossFit HQ. He's the former owner of 810 CrossFit in Michigan, and more recently, he stepped into the world of personal development and mindset work through life coaching at joedegain.com. Welcome, Joe.
Hi, Shannon. Thanks a ton for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks so much. You have coached probably thousands of athletes and coaches, and you have a great perspective on leadership and longevity, personal growth, and you're grounded in experience, many years of experience, right? So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about what makes great coaching, how to build a life of impact, and how to keep growing even when the spark fades, as you reminded me of me saying before I did a level 2 seminar. So let's dive in.
I'm excited.
Well, so I, of course, like to start at the beginning because I always love hearing more like an origin story. How did you first get into CrossFit and what drew you to it initially?
Yeah, my story, I think, is a little bit similar to a lot of people's. I think is I specifically was a high school teacher, and I was in the high school weight room one day, and I was just running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I was running from the pec deck machine over to the elliptical, over to the bicep curl thing. And one of my buddies, one of my colleague teachers came up to me and he said to me, "Hey, are you doing CrossFit?" And I kind of just disregarded him because I was so busy and in the middle of what I was doing. And I said, "No, I'm doing my thing." And I just kind of went around and did my workout. And that night I looked it up. I looked up CrossFit, and the workout of the day on the old CrossFit website was Helen. And Helen, oddly enough, has become my favorite CrossFit workout ever. And it still is to this day. But the very next day I took one of my wrestlers, Kevin. I took Kevin down to the track, and we took two 50-pound dumbbells, and we swung some 50-pound dumbbells like kettlebells, and we did pull-ups from an I-beam underneath the football stadium, and we ran the track. And ever since that day, I've been hooked on CrossFit, and I actually still stay in touch with that high school athlete, Kevin, and he still does CrossFit too. He still loves it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's one of those that you I think that is kind of how it happened for me. You kind of transition what you're naturally doing. You kind of do everything for time because schedules are busy and you're transitioning. I always say CrossFit's for the person with ADD. I think we all have ADD because we got to keep going to the next thing, right?
Yep.
So with that, I know my transition was pretty quick after finding CrossFit, but what was the turning point that led you from being an athlete or more of a coach and then going into CrossFit HQ? What was that transition like?
Well, I'll tell you what, when I attended my L1, I think the CrossFit level 1 I attended was in 2007. It was in Toronto. And I believe it was one of Greg Glassman's last seminars that he actually did on the road. And at that seminar, when I watched Nicole Carroll when I watched Greg get up there and talk, when I watched all of the coaches that were running the small groups, I knew by the way what they were doing and how inspired and touched I was that I wanted to change people's lives the same way. I was educated, I was inspired, I was entertained for the entire weekend, and I just knew I was in the presence of greatness. So I wanted to do what they did, and
Mm-hmm.
shortly after that, I pursued my L2, which actually got taken offline back. This was so long ago. It's not even the current level 2 that we do now. It's a level 2 that got taken away, and I signed up for that. And I remember asking them when I was all done. It was a pass fail, and I was one of the lucky ones that had passed this L2 course. And I just asked him. I said, "Hey, can I want to do what you do. I'm so inspired every time I'm around you. One of my goals, I always wanted to be a motivational speaker when I got older. Ever since I was young, and I was fortunate enough at that meeting that they invited me back to a gig that was going to be in Ann Arbor, my stomping grounds."
Nice.
Um, in about 6 months from the time of that L2, and I gave them all my information, and then they never contacted me. They never reached out, and I was devastated. But that day of that Ann Arbor seminar, I actually just showed up an hour early, and I walked
Really?
in, and yeah, Dave Castro was looking at me like I had three heads. Who are you? Why are you in my meeting right now? And I just had to remind him. I was like, oh yeah, 6 months ago we were in Virginia Beach. I was there. You told me I could come by, but I never heard from you. And Shannon, it was the most lucky experience of my life because he said, "Wow, well, you're in luck. We had a trainer miss a flight, so we're gonna have you coach group 2."
Oh
And
my
I
goodness.
coached that day. I coached that week, and I have been on staff ever since. So I'm always really careful when people ask me, they're like, "Well, how did you get on staff?" And I'm
I-
always real careful. I'm like, well, do you really want to know my story? Because it's a little bit of wild, wild west the way I got on staff. Or do you want to know how you can get on
right.
staff? Is what I always have to classify with people. But yeah, when I saw them do that to other people, I wanted to be part of the gig. I wanted to change people's lives and inspire them to be the best version of themselves that they could be.
That's awesome. I love that. You gotta ask for what you want, right? Gotta make
Yeah, and
make it
sometimes
happen.
you do. It's a dog eat dog world. Sometimes you just got to kind of elbow and
Yep.
bite and claw your way, and then all of a sudden you're exactly where you need to be. And you would I would have never have. It changed the trajectory of my life when I showed up that morning. I
That's
would never
great.
be. I probably want to be here sitting with you,
Yep.
but I just decided to take that risk, and it panned out, and it could have flapped on its face too.
Yep. But you had to ask. So, and
Yeah,
it worked out for you. I just had that conversation the other day, actually. I believe it was with Hannah, who you met at the level 2.
yeah,
So that kind of segues into another question I wanted to ask you. If you had to, go back and give your earlier self one piece of advice before stepping into the coaching world, what would it be? Go ask, right?
yeah. One piece of advice, you know, I think very, very often, I think very often as coaches, we overcomplicate things in our own heads. We really do. We feel this huge, we really do. We want to do well for other people. So we carry this burden, and we study and we watch these YouTube videos, and we go to the seminars, and we feel like when we come into class that we have to be something that we're actually not. And we can overcomplicate things. And I think, like, if I could go back to my beginning days, I would that KISS principle, that KISS, which I believe used to be called keep it simple, stupid. But now in the days of political correctness, keep it short and simple is I believe the new word for it. But don't overcomplicate it. Like, we don't have to throw exercise physiology terms out there when we're coaching people. We don't have to um we don't have to know all the intricacies of the movement when we explain it. We just have to explain broad concepts in regular gym teacher ways that people will understand so they can get moving and stay safe. So yeah, don't try to come in and just drop knowledge bombs on people. Talk in a normal language, and they will melt like butter in your hands because you're speaking their language.
Yep. Yep. I do find that that people want to, or new coaches want to say all the right things or say everything that they've been taught. I tend to throw up on people in the financial industry. I'm like, here's all my nuggets of information. And, I am sure that's got to be difficult with you, because you probably see those coaches for just the weekend and you're like, let me give you everything I've got. But I know
Mm.
you do a good job of not just overwhelming. And you've spent years of coaching the coaches. So what separates the great coaches from the good ones?
Yeah. Well, the CrossFit L2 seminar, at that CrossFit Level 1 seminar, we do the breakouts where basically there's like 10 or 12 participants with one red shirt, the seminar staff running the group. And at the L2 seminar, it's the opposite. It's actually like the participant in the middle of 10 or 12 other participants, colleagues, counterparts, and the red shirt is on the outside evaluating how that coach is doing with those 10 or 12 participants. And when the red shirt, the seminar staff is evaluating them, they evaluate them on 6 things. How well do they teach the movements, the points of performance with it? How well do they know the faults of the movements? How well do they see those faults and the points of performance? How well do they correct the faults that they see? Their group management, their presence and attitude, and their demonstration, and not just their demonstration of the movement, but also like how they carry themselves, like their demonstration of lifestyle. And those 6 criteria they're like, when I mention them: teaching, seeing, correcting, group management, presence and attitude, demonstration. You can kind of see like, yeah, I want all of that. And any coach can probably look at those 6 and say, okay, I'm really, that's my jam. That's my
Mm-hmm.
wheelhouse. And I struggle over here. And the coaches that are the best are the ones that are able to zoom out and understand where their strengths and weaknesses are, and then develop those weaknesses. Because a lot of times what I think will happen is coaches will just find their strengths, and they'll continue to refine it and refine it and refine it and refine it and refine it. And they get really, really, really good at their strengths. But sometimes they never evaluate that one that they just overlooked, whichever one of those 6 criteria. And so finding whatever those 6 criteria are, you're struggling at, and then refining that one, that's where the money's made, I think.
So that kind of, is there one thing that you think that great coaches do differently? I mean, you kind of answered that, but would you go in
Yeah.
that direction with the refining it, or what would you say?
Yeah. Well, I definitely, the good coach is going to be the one. I mean, you got to, oh my gosh, you got to have all of them. You really do. You got to have that. You got to have that knowledge of your craft in order to teach it, right? So you got to have the knowledge of your, and you also have to have that unaccredited degree in psychology, that one that your social wherewithal to be able to, and that dives into the presence and attitude, right? Your ability to adjust the way your delivery is depending on who the individual is and how they're receiving it. And you've probably experienced this too as a coach, where, I mean, sometimes you've got clients that walk in the door and you're just like, oh, there's Mike. I'm just going to give Mike about 3 minutes before I even say anything to Mike. And then, I don't know. And then Susan walks in, and Susan, you got to go give Susan a fist pump right away, because she's a ball of energy when she comes walking in. She wants to tell you about her day. And the ones that are able to use that unaccredited degree in psychology and take that presence and attitude and adapt it to be able to meet anybody and everybody at their threshold.
Mm-hmm.
And then the ability to even keep yourself in check, because I always explain that being a trainer is a great gig, but it doesn't mean that you are not subject to bad days yourself anymore. So when you can show up and be of service to others, when you can
Mm-hmm.
show up to be of service to others when you're having a bad day, when I don't know, you had I don't know, some type of disruption in your lifestyle the day before, but you can show up and keep delivering, using that unaccredited degree in psychology to both for yourself and for your athletes and the social wherewithal. People want to be around people that can meet that threshold for all.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, I only got to spend 2 days with you, but you did a great job, and were very impactful. So keep it up. I'm sure there's a reason why you're in your position, right?
I appreciate that. I
So,
appreciate yeah. And people do, they show up to those seminars all over the place. Some of them are nervous. Some people are
yeah.
very, very nervous. Some people are excited beyond their mean, they're just so excited to be there. And yeah, just meeting them and then sometimes those emotions change mid-seminar. So
How many weekends do you do a month? Is this just every single weekend you go? Speaking of staying on your game or staying in the right mindset, that's a lot.
yeah, you know, I work a lot. I love to work seminars. I Working seminars is an amazing, it's hard for me to even call it a job. It really is. I feel like a job. I don't, like I'm supposed to be punching in
Mm-hmm.
and punching out. And I love showing up for the weekends. And I can do 2 to 4 a month.
Oh.
I never do less than two. Um, Sometimes I get really, really busy. It all depends on what the demands are.
Mm-hmm.
Some people sign up at certain times of the year. They sign up more. Sometimes during the year they sign up less. So the demand definitely dictates how often I get on the road. But I'll tell you what, when I'm on the road, it doesn't feel like a job. It just feels like I am showing up, and that's an advantage I have. When you mentioned, like, how do I stay energized?
Mm-hmm.
How do I stay grounded? Um, it helps. It really helps to have a job that I love. And people want to be there. People want to learn. I feel like I do a good job at it. I feel like people respond well to it. And so that definitely helps.
Definitely love what you do and never work a day in your life, right?
Yeah. Maybe the travel, the
Yeah.
travel part. That's the job for me, is the travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what takes its toll on me. But um, so having seen so many new coaches, because you've seen all levels, what would you say the biggest mistake you see in the newer coaches? I know early on I felt that with CrossFit the new coaches wanted to just kill kill participants, and that gave CrossFit
Yeah.
a bad name. But what would you say, and maybe more recently, what do you see newer coaches making as mistakes? Is there one
Yeah.
thing?
I definitely think there's a misconception out there that the definition of CrossFit is constantly varied functional movements at high intensity. And that high intensity piece might be the part that there's the most misconception about, that it is just like this reckless abandonment intensity at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
And you know this because you were at the seminar. It doesn't actually refer to that at all. When we break it down, we talk about the relative intensity part, and that's the somebody's physical threshold and their psychological threshold. Physical threshold is now, this is going to refer to their when they're doing the workouts, is we only want mechanics to degrade barely. We barely want mechanics to degrade when we move, and if we move too much speed and too much load, then mechanics will degrade grossly. So that's going to be, if we're moving too much speed and too much load and it's reckless abandonment intensity, then our mechanics are going to grossly degrade, and that's not the goal. We want to reach the part of that threshold, right at the threshold where mechanics start to degrade, and then we can just kind of back off. So that's the physical part, but also the psychological part. That there's some people that they need to exercise some demons. They need to get some demons out. And some people they're just not used to working hard at all.
Mm-hmm.
So getting them to show up the next day, you have to let them do a little bit of you have to get them right around their psychological threshold. And if you go over that psychological threshold too much, you're going to make them a beaten down puppy dog anyways between the ears, and they're not going to show up the next day. You back off too much and they're going to think like this, I'm not going to get any results.
Think you
So
don't
finding
care.
that focus spot for each person is
Yeah.
a real art form.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, I mean, it's more than just fitness. So how do you help coaches develop those intangibles, like the presence, the communication, and confidence? I mean, confidence would be a hard one to transfer, maybe
Yeah.
not, but
Yeah. For me, all right. So two things. First of all, I try to lead by example. You got to give them a living model. The number one way humans learn is by imitation. We can imitate people. So I try to lead by example, and hopefully the same way, like when I was telling you earlier, when I showed up to my L1 and I didn't even know what was happening on the inside of me, but I knew I wanted to be part of
Mm-hmm.
what those people were doing. That's what I hope happens when people are in my presence at the seminars and when they're around me, that they're just like, wow, um, that person's not missing a beat. They're totally dialed in with what they're talking about. Their social wherewithal is dialed in, and so I try to lead by example with that. And then also, as I'm trying to develop people, or I'm working with them at seminars, or if I'm working with them over time, is just having patience and grace for wherever people are in their unique journey. I really think that if you really take a step back and you evaluate where anybody is in their coaching journey or in their life journey, you're gonna find that if you can get to them psychologically right where they are, and you can really hear the things that are on their mind, then you can relate to them, because we're all of even though we all live such different lifestyles, there's going to be some similarities where we can find, and then we can start to really relate to that individual. So just having patience. Nobody's going to be perfect when they start, but having patience and grace and understanding that, some people need to be, some people need to be told, they just need to be grabbed by the shoulder and pulled up front. Like, no, stay right here and coach. You're going and hiding in the corner. Stop hiding in the corner. Get out here, get in front of people. Some people need that kind of a nudge, and some people need a nudge that is going to be almost like, instead of, I don't know, using the word hamstrings and glutes, let's just talk about getting to a proper depth. Let's just talk about getting low enough so a marble rolls towards your hips, instead of telling somebody to engage their hamstrings
Mm-hmm.
uh, when they move. So finding where that individual threshold is for everybody, being patient, meeting them right there, and making wherever their journey is okay. It's okay to be there in your journey. You're a brand new coach. You shouldn't know this stuff. You're a really well developed coach. You're trying to employ too much.
Mm-hmm. Right. Too many words. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
You've
It's,
also said you don't just coach movement, you coach people. So that falls into everything you just said. Is you're coaching the people, the
yeah,
coaches. Yeah.
yeah, coaching people. I've kind of dived into that recently. I've had a lot of people reach out to me that I've met, just, I don't know, just met around the way, and on seminars and whatnot. And they just get interested in, how do I advance my life? How
Yeah.
do I and it just takes a lot of listening. It takes a lot of listening and finding out where they are, and a lot of asking, because a lot of people are like, how do I advance in my life? And one of the reasons they're not advancing in their life is because they're not telling you about something else in their life.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know how to get to this. They're mentioning this thing they want to do, and you can hear that. That's really easy to identify. But then the more you talk to them, like, oh gosh, we got these other things that we need to talk about before we can even get to that part. So yeah, meeting people where their threshold is and finding out what's gonna be that trigger to, or that lever to help them move forward.
Definitely. So, I mean, leadership, and that's what some some of the focus of your website is, or joedegain.com, with the leadership and the life coaching. But you're clearly leading from the front. Um, you're not just a trainer; you're a leader. You're a role model. What's that leadership journey looked like for you up to this point? I know you've gone into some detail, but how's
Yeah,
coaching impacted you personally outside
yeah,
of the gym? That type of
yeah.
thing.
Um, Well, I mean, coaching coaches. I have coaching. It's kind of always been on my mind to coach coaches. It really has been. Even when I mean, my previous life, I was a teacher, and my main goal was always to be an athletic director. I actually wanted to. I really wanted to coach coaches and to be of service, to understand the craft of coaching. It's always intrigued me. It's and Yeah, so it's always kind of been a burning thing in the back of my mind to be of service to others. Maybe that's what it is. I guess you're kind of pressing me to do a little internal look on myself right now, Shannon. But I think it's always been a burning desire to be of service to others that want to be of service to others. And that's one of my favorite things Like when I show up to the L1, it's one of the reasons that I like my job so much is like when I show up to an L1 seminar or an L2 seminar, when I read the bios before people show up and when I talk to people about why they're there in those seats, they are there to be of service to others. And that like whether it's, oh, I want to run the kids program at my gym, or oh, I want to run the master's program at my gym, or I want to learn cues so that way I can help my friends out at the gym. Or maybe it's a gym owner that's like, I want to develop my coaches. Everybody wants to be of service to others. So to be able to be in the unique role where I can be of service to those people, um, uh, that yeah, just to constantly be of service, and I try to lead by example by being of service to those people. So yeah, it's always been intrigued. It's always been embedded in me, I think.
You've worked hard to get where you are. But now what? Hi, I'm Jenna Stoliker, a leadership coach who helps people navigate change with intention. So you don't just survive the next chapter, you grow through it. Whether you're stepping into something new or wondering what's next, let's find your next right step. Learn more at jennastoliker.com.
And I think that's even where CrossFit started is that coaching one-on-one, and then I can coach a group, and then I can coach more people. So now you helping the coaches means that you're coaching a whole heck of a lot more people because you're coaching them through those coaches.
Yeah, and I get a lot of selfishly I get a lot of satisfaction when I talk to somebody who's a CrossFitter. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I see somebody with CrossFit shoes at a store. I don't know whether Nanos, Nobles,
Right.
Metcons, whatever they are. Um, and I, oh, hey, cool shoes. You must do CrossFit. Where do you go?
Mm-hmm.
And then when I find out where they go, and I remember that participant, I remember that coach at the seminar, and maybe even a conversation that we had, I almost feel like I'm looking at my students' kids is what I feel like. And I feel like, oh my gosh, it's so cool because I don't know, maybe they're employing some of the stuff that I taught them, taught their coach. I bet you they're learning from it. And it's just, it's a real, Maslow's hierarchy of needs where they, to be a complete human, you got to have all layers of support.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things in there is having a job that you view as a fulfilling job. And for people that can mean a different thing, right? Some people can just make a lot of money with a job that doesn't have any philanthropy attached to it, but are providing money to their family, and that's the goal. That means it's fulfilling to them. For me, I love that fills my part of that pyramid is when I run into those, when I find out, oh, so and so is your coach. Man, I've had great interactions with so and so, and I can think of those things, and then I find out that person has impacted all of these lives.
That's great. Yeah. It's always nice when somebody comes up to you and remembers something you said, or I've had it where somebody said to me before, do you remember what you said to me? I'm thinking, oh, no. What did I say?
I hope it wasn't bad.
Right. Exactly. So speaking of the mind, right? What keeps you mentally sharp and grounded physically when you're doing on the road doing seminars every week? And I know that you will get in there and do a workout so that you're staying physically active, but is there something specific that keeps you mentally sharp and grounded?
Yeah, I do. I have something, and and you know what? I have my morning routine, and I know this is like everybody on social media wants to do a morning routine.
Right.
Everybody's got to have a morning routine. I do get embarrassed because like I have turned into a little bougie, and I'm like that special snowflake where if I don't get my morning routine in, now I have a bad day.
Yeah.
I hate to admit that I could slip to there, but I have about 75 minutes that I will always try to budget for my time. And it doesn't include my CrossFit workout. My CrossFit workout comes later in the day, but I have about 75 minutes that I like to dedicate whatever time I need to be somewhere in the morning. I kind of reverse engineer my wake up to budget in my 75 minutes plus my 20 minutes. So I need about 95 minutes. I need 20 minutes to get ready, and I need 75 minutes to do my stuff. So I need about 95 minutes before I need to leave the hotel to go to the seminar, um, or if I'm at home. And by design, what I do in that 75 minutes is meant to be I need no equipment, and all I need is a 5x5 blank area of space is all that I need. I don't need to traverse. I don't need so now that gives me no excuses. Wherever I am in the world, I can wake up and I can do this thing. I can be in a hotel room. I don't have to have my things to be able to do them. I don't need I don't need my sauna to be present. I just need my little 5x5 space. And when I engage in there, that just allows me to get my headspace in the morning. It allows me to work through some thoughts. I'm not doing social media. It's 75 minutes of just me in my own head doing my thing. I've got the whole thing memorized, and just to be in my own space usually takes me about 15 or 20 minutes to just kind of wake up. And then I really start to get focused. And then when I have my first cup of coffee at minute 76, I am like, I'm wound up and I'm ready to kill the day. But that's my bread and butter is at 75 minutes. Yeah.
That's great. Do you are you ritualistic with the time that you get up, or does that flow from day to day?
That will flow. If I was coaching somebody, I would tell them that for their circadian rhythm and for overall health, it would be beneficial.
Right.
But I guess I don't actually practice what I preach there.
Yeah. Hey, constantly varied though, right?
Yeah, I guess it is. I guess. Thank
Yes.
you for
Yes.
validating.
Yes.
It is constantly varied.
I can justify anything. Well, even when we love what we do, those I can imagine the demands can wear on you. So let's talk about staying in the game. How do you personally manage the burnout or fatigue in that physical or emotional demanding field? Do you get time off? Do you do yoga?
Well, I mean, but I'll tell you what, that 75 minutes routine in the morning, it definitely has, there's some stretching in there. So there's a couple yoga poses in there that I get into. Yeah, for sure. But so basically you're saying you're like, listen, Joe, I know the going gets tough.
Right. The travel, everything gets exhausting.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a physically demanding field. I know that early on I thought, am I going to be doing this in my 70s?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what keeps you?
Well, we've got to surround ourselves with the social strength to, I don't even know if I'm going to get this quote right or this urban legend right, but it's kind of along the lines of like, we are a direct result or a direct reflection of the 5 people we spend the most time with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've seen plenty of self-help or self-improvement type players and books talk about how we need to eliminate things that are not elevating us and put people into our lives that are going to be one of those 5 that we choose. And those 5, including my wife is one of those 5s, Liz. Just, there's some people that you can be around that don't allow for complacency. They don't allow for complacency. And even when you start to feel complacency start to creep into your life, you look at the people that you surrounded yourselves with and you be like, wow, there is no complacency sitting around these parts. And just getting inspired off of watching their actions and watching, I mean, I can say that firsthand, even with the one I spend the most with is my wife, Liz. And I'm watching her and what a go-getter she is. And then it just immediately inspires me. If I'm starting to feel sorry for myself, which we all will, we'll all start to feel sorry for ourselves at some point along our journey. And then just, and looking left, looking right, and being like, all right, these are my people. This is my inner circle. And this is the only way forward. I guess for me, it's always been a non-negotiable. We just, you just gotta keep driving forward. I've always believed in that. Like, you don't want to do it. So
Right.
that means nothing.
Yeah.
You I hear you that you want to do it, but do it.
Yeah.
And I like to surround myself with people like that. I really do. I think of all my best friends. I think of all the people that I try to be with. And that's what the people on staff are like. A lot of times the people who show up at L1s, that's their attitude for the weekend. They're there to get shit done.
Well, and I can answer this for me, because you've already said it, but you said about leading by example. But if there are coaches, or if somebody feels, I mean, this could apply to anything, but if somebody feels stuck or starting to lose the spark, for me, I was feeling that, and just being immersed in it again for a weekend, even though, I told you from the get, I dreaded going. I just didn't want to give up my weekend for this, but it really did. And I think it was by example, because I can't say that there was one thing that you said that, not to take away any credit from you, but there wasn't one thing that you said that, like, snapped me out of it. And it was just a great experience. But is there something that you find can be motivating, or is there something that you would say to coaches who are losing their spark?
If a coach is losing their spark, that's Simon Sinek. He says you got to remember your why, right? Know your why, and then you have to revisit that why, and maybe sometimes this fitness industry, there's a lot of distractions in this fitness industry. It's a multi-million trillion dollar industry, and there's all kinds of side gimmicks to distract us and to look left and right. And I think sometimes we can get distracted, and then we forget what our why is. We're thinking about, I don't know, this new piece of equipment, this new sexy piece of equipment, this new supplement that we got to get in our gym because it's going to solve something, this new cool new programming by some games athlete that's podium 4 years in a row. There's a lot of distractions and things to think that, like, oh, this is going to fix the stuff if we go get this new equipment. And even like, and sometimes I even think, like, I really, sometimes I feel like even the competition of CrossFit can be a distraction from what the important part, the health and wellness part of CrossFit. It can be, right.
Definitely.
And I see that with coaches, is sometimes they get distracted by the competition side of CrossFit, and they reach kind of what you're saying now, like, why am I complacent? Why am I burnt out? Well, it's because all you're doing all week is just trying to inspire people to throw 1,000 wall balls in 1 minute every weekend. And maybe they've lost track of their own why. They got into this for health and wellness, and CrossFit competition is definitely a hook. It's part of it's a novel part of CrossFit, and it can play a role. But anything can sidetrack a person too much, and then we forget about the health and wellness journey that we're trying to supply for others. And that health and wellness journey does not have to be overly complicated. It really doesn't. I mean, you just have to eat right. You just have to eat real foods, and you got to get out there and do your functional movements, and you got to vary them, and you got to try.
Right.
You got to constantly doing functional movements at high intensity, and it really is a simple formula. But I think the supplement industry, the competition part of our industry, the equipment part, even like what kind of program, what kind of exercising or fitness you should be participating in, what kind of fitness is the best for you. And sometimes we lose track of that health and wellness. And once you root yourself and you have your anchor, and you can go back to the health and wellness part of it, and that is so pure, and that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants that. Our country and world is being ravaged by chronic diseases right now. Everybody just wants health and wellness, and it keeps everything simple, right? Keep it simple, stupid.
Right.
Backing it down and getting back to your why, realizing that you're in it for this reason, not for the reason that you may have gotten sidetracked with.
That's great. That definitely applies to more than just this. So that's great. There's your life coaching, right?
I try to apply it when I can.
Yeah. Well, you've definitely had a front row seat to how CrossFit's evolved. And, you were mentioning that about losing your why, or losing, or focusing on the games, or focusing on the competition of it, which is great. And I know how much the competition side of it has evolved. But what's your thoughts on the culture and where it's going?
I I feel I feel very excited about the future of CrossFit. I really do. And here's why is you know, here's why is because we're getting so many coaches right now that are starting to acquire wisdom. Coaches have been in this for a second now. And those coaches that you mentioned, like you said, how do you stop from getting complacent, from getting burnt out?
Mm-hmm.
If those coaches can wist- hold off that onset of burnout and getting distracted, and if the wisdom that they have, and really I think that's a wisdom of health and wellness, because we keep talking about the competition part. A lot of times, like, it's a hook. It
Mm-hmm.
hooks people in. And then I know that's when I got into CrossFit. I was like, yeah, I bet you I can thruster more than you. I bet you I can Fran, my Fran. Let's do Fran. Let's do it. Let's throw down. Who's gonna win this one? And over time, you start to realize, you start to acquire the wisdom of leaning more into the health and wellness side of the journey. And that helps. There's going to be, in the future, there's going to be people who are going to get hooked the same way I did, and the same way a lot of CrossFitters did 15 years ago. And it's going to be that reckless abandonment intensity thing. Potentially, it could be.
Mm-hmm.
And then what that means is those people have to wait until they put their hand on a hot stove, redirect themselves towards health and wellness. But right now, I think we're at a place where coaches have wisdom right now. There are some 10 and 15, 20-year-old, 30 people with 30 years experience, 25 years experience, 20 years experience, where the ability to understand where somebody is in their fitness journey when they walk in the door is getting better and better and better. And it has evolved over the point of a decade or two of just being able to recognize, I know exactly what part of my unaccredited degree in psychology I should employ here to
Mm-hmm.
get the results I need, or the results that this person could use in their lives. So I think there's, I hope that those people who are burnt out, or if they are getting complacent and they're just kind of stuck between their own four walls, I hope they can start to understand that wisdom that they have, and they are incredible assets to the methodology of CrossFit. The longer people have been into it, I love the new kid out of college, the 21-year-old, just like resilient body, could
Bouncing
put
off the wall.
themselves, just put themselves through all kinds of torture. Good kudos, I love them still, but they don't have the wisdom yet to understand how to make this a lifestyle of
Right.
health and wellness. And soon they will soon.
Yeah.
But it's not, you almost got to put your hand on that hot stove yourself,
Yeah.
to be able to understand how to acquire that wisdom.
Definitely. So what do you hope? I mean, you kind of answered this, but not to put you on the spot in like one profound statement, right? But what do you hope the next generation of CrossFit coaches never forget?
I hope they never forget that this journey is about eliminating chronic disease, and it's about eliminating chronic disease, and it's about health and wellness is what this is. It's definitely about the community. The community is important, but it's not, lean into that competition side. If you need to lean into it, if that's what somebody needs to get their psychological buttons pushed, lean into it. But always remember, the journey is about health and wellness, and don't get sidetracked. That's exactly what it would have been.
That's awesome. Yeah. So before we wrap, though, because I try to keep this within, I could just keep talking to you, but then
I
it's
will blow it. I will blow
self-serving. But just I like to ask, because I named this podcast Compounding Change. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I had to think about that a little because when you invited me on and I read what the title was, I was intrigued. I was like, "What does compounding change mean? What is that?" And immediately, what I thought of is I thought of, and I've heard you talk a few times about the financial side of things, like
Mm-hmm.
that compounding. I view it as my portfolio, my
Right.
401k, my Roth IRA. I view it as my portfolio building, but applying that same concept to whatever we're doing today in our lives or whatever we've done before, not just to our finances.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when when I first got into teaching, right when I was out of college, my very first job, I was a school teacher, and I had this old timer. His name was Chuck DeArmond, and Chuck was assigned to me as my mentor. And I was just this young kid out of college. I thought, what's this old timer going to teach me? I know all the new stuff. I just got my fresh degree.
Mm-hmm.
And Chuck would watch me work with kids, and he'd watch me try to have these, he'd watch me have hard conversations with kids. When they're doing stuff wrong, not just punishing them, but trying to have the real conversation to make them understand why things should be a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always trying to engage in these hard conversations. And Chuck pulled me aside one day and he said, "Joe," he goes, "you're doing good." He said, "I want to let you know that the best compliment you're ever going to receive as a coach, you're not going to get it you're not going to get it to your face." And I was like, "What do you mean, Chuck?" And he said, "Well, what's going to happen is those people that you're having those hard conversations with now, these kids are going to get older, and they're going to be sitting at the dinner table with their kids one day, and their kids are going to be doing the same shit that they were doing."
Mm-hmm.
And what they're going to tell their kids at that point, whether or not they listen to you right now or not, Joe, they're going to tell their kids, they're going to say, "That's not how things were when I was younger. Because my mom or my dad or my coach or my teacher, they would have sat me down and they would have set me straight."
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I guess where I'm trying to go here is hard conversations. Hard conversations is a skill that's leaving our society today. The ability to engage in a hard conversation and the ability to be on the receiving end of somebody who wants to start a hard conversation. And but those hard conversations oftentimes are where and in this it's where the change is made, is when those hard conversations come up. And it goes with everything that happens within the walls of your gym. Being a CrossFit coach is not too much different than being a middle school lunchroom monitor when you're dealing with human behavior. And there are things that you have to have hard conversations about with nutrition, about styles of training, the attitudes that people have when they come in. And it's not just those things, but it's also just like, there's always going to be rep shavers in the gym. There's always going to be somebody who's showing up 5 minutes late for class. There's always going to be, and by no means am I even saying that person who's shaving reps was deliberately shaving reps. And by no means am I saying that person
Right.
showing up 5 minutes late didn't have a darn good reason to show up 5 minutes late. But those hard conversations, unless we engage in those, you either find out, yep, person's abusing a situation, or or now I have a clear perspective on things. So engaging in hard conversations, and having that ability to that way when people get older, they do it too, and then we become a better society overall, I think,
Mm-hmm.
by doing those things. So yeah, your biggest compliment's going to come when your lesson that you gave them goes to somebody else, and you'll never receive that lesson, or you'll never
Definitely.
receive that compliment.
Yeah. Yeah. So the small habits create the change. The daily practices that we talked about create the change. That leads into another question I wanted to ask you, because I do feel like you are impactful. But what kind of legacy do you hope to leave behind, like as a leader, a coach, and just as a human being?
That was it. What I just told you.
Okay.
That was it. I hope.
Perfect.
I hope. I don't need them to. I don't. My legacy isn't my. It's not going to be my name. It's not going to be anything I did. It would be. It would be the lessons that people were able to learn about themselves, and when they share that information as if it was their own.
That's
Maybe
great.
they gave credit for some theoretical character they had in their life, like me, maybe like my coach Joe. Maybe they do
Mm-hmm.
say that, but I hope that the legacy left isn't about my name. It's not even, nobody remembers who I am, but the lesson just goes down to some offspring, and then it goes down to more offspring, and I guess even offspring. I mean, like even the way in a gym, like from one
Mm-hmm.
coach to the athlete, and then it goes and it just trickles down. And I hope that engaging in hard conversations and always speaking the truth and being around people like what you said. I'm flattered that you said just by being around me. There wasn't one specific thing I said, but after being around me for a weekend, you felt, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, I want to go be a better Shannon.
Yep. Yep.
Um, I hope that that's the legacy that gets passed on, and it doesn't actually have to do with Joe DeGain, my name.
That's great. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's been powerful. I so looked forward to today. And I appreciate you sharing your time. I love what you say about legacy, and I do believe that you will definitely have that. I also remember you saying, which I think is helpful, and another thing that will trickle down is about staying curious as a coach. And I think that applies to life as well, just staying curious. And I love learning about people, and I appreciate you giving me your time.
It's been
And
awesome. Thanks so much, Shannon. I've really
thank you.
enjoyed it.
Well, it's been a great reminder that real change doesn't always come in one moment, right? It's not built with one rep, one conversation. It's just one after another, one choice at a time builds those changes. So hopefully this episode's inspired other people or made someone reflect on their own journey. I'd love for you to share this with someone else, with a fellow coach, with a friend, and you can find more episodes and resources at Davis Compounding Change. Thanks so much for listening. Till next time.
This has been the Compounding Change Podcast with Shannon Davis. If you are a firefighter or first responder, you know that change happens fast. Life changes, finance changes, compounding change. Shannon Davis is a certified retirement counselor who understands the needs of Ohio Association of Professional Firefighters members. Click on daviscompoundingchange.com to learn more. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Retirement Plan Advisors LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. Cambridge Investment Research and Retirement Planning Advisors are not related to daviscompoundingchange.com or this podcast. Please note that investment involves risk and no statements made in this recording are indicative of future performance. The Compounding Change Podcast is brought to you by Shannon Davis.